and welcome to Micadelic. I'm Mike Brancatelli. You're you, and today's guest is Anthony David Adams. Sometimes I'm you and you're me, and he's you and you're me, but today we're all here together to listen to this awesome conversation that I had with my friend Anthony David Adams. It was so good to reconnect. I guess I could say friend. We were acquaintances. We worked near each other in a WeWork office building in 2012. Anthony was tinkering away on his many entrepreneurial endeavors while I was working for a iPad magazine that we thought was going to be the cool new thing. Whoa, turn pages on a screen. That's cool, man. Yeah. Like so many little startup endeavors that I've been a part of, we pivoted into other things. But at the time, I met Anthony and I thought, man, this guy is really interesting. You know, I'm a little younger, still am a little younger than Anthony. And at the time, I was like, maybe like 25, 26. I was thinking, wow, you know, this is cool. People get to do these kinds of things in the world. Just get a little office space and invent things and start things and create change in the world and create things that we want. And really around that time, I was starting to experiment with psychedelics, and being around people like Anthony was like, made me think, wow, the world really is kind of malleable. We can really, change it if we want to by just getting creative and having ideas and collaborating and working hard on them. And so I would always see Anthony in the office, just so focused on creating. Just always so focused on creating, and we would always have really good conversations whenever we got whenever we got the opportunity to. So I'm so glad that I got a chance to reconnect with Anthony and that he agreed to come on the show and have a great interview-ish conversation with me. And I think you guys are really gonna enjoy it. It's a really, really good one. Particularly when Anthony talks a little bit about his struggles with being diagnosed with certain kinds of mental conditions, not necessarily having the right facilitators or containers to allow certain experiences to unfold. You'll hear it all from him. But he has recently been the subject of a PBS documentary, Mysteries of Mental Illness. Mysteries of Mental Illness explores the story of mental illness in science and society. The 4-part series on PBS traces the evolution of this complex topic from its earliest days to present times. It explores dramatic attempts across generations to unravel the mysteries of mental illness and give voice to contemporary Americans across a spectrum of experiences. So I put that in the show description. And everything that you will want to know about this show will be in the show description. So when you're listening to the show, at any point, if you want to pause, you want to go down into the show description, you want to pop out, check out a link or something like that, go for it. I feel like sometimes I can go on and on about things here, but how many people are really getting what I'm saying here about the information? So it's all there. It's in text format. It's clickable. Go down there, check it out. Also, if you share this episode and tag at Anthony David Adams and at Micadelic_podcast on Instagram, you will get a free copy of Anthony's Mandala Workbook, A Journey of Discovery and Integration. And you can also see the list of books that Anthony has there. All the links are down there. Connect with Anthony, website, the PBS doc, join an event, Decriminalize Nature, which he's a part of in New York City. But yeah, if you're interested, just tag Anthony and me on Instagram or wherever. You can tag us wherever it's taggable, and you will get a free copy of Anthony's Mandala Workbook, A Journey of Discovery and Integration. So big thanks to Ohana Kava Bar, Fungi Academy, SHEATH Underwear, and Mushroom Revival, also Student Loan Tutor. All of those links are in the show description as well. So if you want to check out some amazing, super chill, super relaxing kava from Ohana Kava Bar in capsules, in tinctures, in powder that can mixes into tea, it is just so good. I love it. Check that out. Sheath underwear, so comfortable. I was camping over the weekend, doing a bunch of things, went paddle boarding in my Sheath underwear. I was wearing them, several different pairs, and my girlfriend loves them too. We were actually sitting at the picnic table at our campsite, and she's like, yeah, I really love this underwear. It's just great. Like, I'm able to wear it and kind of just give it a little quick wash, and it dries, and it's so comfortable. And I was like, oh, you're wearing the Sheath? She's like, yeah, I'm wearing Sheath. So I'm like, let's shoot a little commercial. But they're great. They love podcasts. They're big supporters of what we do. And we will be joining Bobby, the founder of SHEATH, who you heard on this podcast, Robert Patton, his brother Matt, the founder of Time Wheel, and the founder and creator of the new Time Wheel Podcast Network. I will be joining this network, and really, I look at it more as like a collective, right? We're all friends. We all have podcasts. We've all done each other's shows, and we feel that together is better, right? I mean, we get to do cool events like this podcast launch party in Austin. So come out July 10th in Austin, Texas. I believe it's from 6 to 11 at the Church of the Sacred Womb. The information will be in the show description as well. But it will be me, Michael Phillip of Third Eye Drops, Jen Sodini, Radio Amenti podcast, Robert Patton Global, and Matt Zian of the Zian Archive. And this is just the beginning of this really exciting endeavor that I'm just super, super thrilled to be a part of. Just such a talented group of individuals who really are just amazing creators, and looking forward to just collaborating and mind jamming and riffing and co-creating and seeing what emerges from that. But it's going to be a great time. It's going to be in Austin, Texas. As I said, it's going to be 6 to 11. It's donation based, which is great. Just come. No excuses not to. If you're in the area, just come hang out. Even if you're not, drive in. It's going to be great. It's going to be a really good fun time. Just so good to get out and be with other people, especially like-minded, like-hearted souls. So it's called the Mind Jam and Ecstatic Dance launch event for Time Wheel Podcast Network, hosted by the Church of the Sacred Womb. A live podcast event on meaning, wonder, and creativity, followed by ecstatic dance. So there'll be ecstatic dance, live music, live podcasts, visionary painting, yoga and breath work, and some pop-up shops. So come join us July 10th in Austin, Texas. Myself, Jen Sodini, Michael Phillip, Third Eye Drops, Radio Amenti, ZN Archive, and we will be riffing and jamming and boogieing down and just being with each other in a real community sense. That's what I'm looking forward to, and that's what I would love for you guys to be a part of as well. So with that being said, like I said, go check out all the links, go check out all the information. Everything that you hear on this podcast is funded and supported by the people who pay fiat currency to me on Patreon. Just got it in, just sent it over to me from PayPal. Thank you to all of you wonderful people out there that do that. And if you want to join this community, go to patreon.com/Mike Brank and select a level, select a tier, get access to the Discord. I got stickers in now. I got other, bonus episodes, a lot of really good stuff going on there. So check that out. And please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps the show tremendously. And if you want to do anything else, just listen to the show, enjoy it, and share it. Tell people about it, subscribe, all that good stuff. I hope you guys like this episode as much as I did. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hope to see y'all in Austin on July 10th. It's going to be fun. Live event. Nothing like a live event. I already said without further ado, and then I went on to talk about the event again, didn't I? Well, now without further ado, let's get into this podcast with the great, the talented, the wonderful, the compassionate, the kind, my friend, Anthony David Adams.
Psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information processing. They open to us the possibility that everything we know is wrong.
We don't need new laws that control our consciousness and rigidly place it in a prison.
Cognitive liberty. The fact that as adults, if we're not hurting anybody else, we should have the right to explore the contours of our own consciousness without any mediation or legislation on the part of somebody else.
Reject authority. Authority is a lie.
Or is it perception?
Information is power, but we have to seize the opportunity. The opportunity.
Welcome. Yeah, man. How have you been? You're always up to so many things. And so I feel like there's no shortage of things to tell, one. Sometimes when I ask people, hey, what's up? How have you been? What's new? What's going on in your world? What's exciting for you right now? They're just like, oh, just things and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll say that I recently saw you post something where you were really moved by, I believe, a woman who was holding space. And I was moved by you being moved, posting that. And then I saw who that woman was, and my girlfriend happened to be doing her first doula experience in Texas. And so I was like, wow, this woman would really connect with her. So I sent her page on Instagram to follow. I was like, you should check this out. How did
you know the person that I was with?
I'm savvy, man.
You know for sure it was the person?
No, I don't know. I saw comments and I was like, oh, maybe this is the woman.
Oh, right on.
Maybe it wasn't. Was it?
No,
am I right or no?
I think she was involved. I think she was the one who was being sat for.
Oh, okay.
I think. I mean, we'd have to figure it through, but I think that she was the one being. It was equally beautiful. It was all very beautiful. But yeah, the medicine woman is it was so. Well, you read the thing, but yeah, it was like the experience of. I got a friend asked me to go with her. Just can you come be with me in this space?
Right.
And so I went, and it was so powerful. It was on so many levels. Like I think it helped me to just being there, helped me to integrate my previous Bufo experience from 2 years ago, which was really the last significant psychedelic experience that I had that was medicine potentiated. But also watching this person work, watching this medicine woman work in the space, it was so beautiful. Like that's what I said. I literally wept from the beauty of what she was doing. I felt like I was watching like a ballerina, or like just the artistry of what was happening. And it was and some of it was very subtle. And I kind of imagined that if someone hadn't been experienced or skilled or practiced in holding space in general, they might not even know what's going on there and just completely miss it. They wouldn't be able to appreciate it in that way. But right. I think from years of holding space for people, there was just some recognition of like a very high level of mastery and artistic integrity that I've never experienced that professionally before, where I just like wept because someone's work was so beautiful. It was so interesting to be there, and then the experience itself was very beautiful and moving and challenging and difficult, and it lasted an hour and a half. Normally these things are 10 to 20 minute experiences.
Wow.
And before the experience happened, the woman that was taking the medicine, it was like as soon as she took the medicine, it was as if she looked at the medicine woman and she just said, "You can handle this." And then she went into this like trance state, like, and it then set the medicine woman up for what she described as her most challenging, lengthy experience. But the person who was being sat for almost like told her like a preview of what's about to come. Like, you've got this. And then she went into this crazy space. The whole thing was just so wild.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And you said something really interesting there too about how just simply being there in that energy and witnessing that was really helpful for you as well.
It really, really was. Yeah. I think that one of my biggest, if I think about the topography of my psyche, it's like fear of going to hell, fear of going crazy. Like those are things that I've dealt with over and over in my life. And so it definitely, there was a moment when we were in this medicine space where I thought, not that I was going, I thought this person that was being sat for, I was like, man, she might not come back from this. Like, she might be the one person who doesn't, come back from this experience. And I was like, I may be putting my friend in diapers for the next 40 years. Like, I don't know, I don't know what's happening. And so there was this moment where I've never had that when I've sat for someone personally, but I think because I was in this almost like co-facilitation, almost like a assisting role, I was like, it was hitting an edge of my capacity to be in that space. And the medicine woman actually called her back. It was after an hour and a half, she said, "Can you open your eyes?" And it was almost like a mother calling her kid home from playing outside for dinner with this like loving, stern energy. It was just like, it's time to come back now. Mm-hmm. And then she did. But she said, man, I thought that I was not coming back from that. It was just, I kept getting pulled back into some. So I think that watching it, witnessing it, it allowed some part of me to get activated, like whatever that fear of going crazy is, and helped me even to further integrate this deeper trust in the psyche that when it's supported in a healthy way, that it does naturally orient itself. Like, it naturally puts itself back together. Like, it wants to come back together to wholeness. Like, it's moving in that direction. So that was quite helpful and beautiful. And also just, God, the other piece too, I think, was that this woman that was in the space, she was dealing with some trauma around a grandfather that had molested her, that had raped her. And so that you could tell. I mean, I don't know if every time I sit for someone, like, or I'm in this space with someone that's in that world, it's like, you just know where, when you're doing breath work, or I always feel like I know exactly where they are in their life narrative. It's like you're just there with them in that, and you're feeling everything they're going through. And so I knew that she was experiencing that, and you could watch her moving and just the way she was acting. And but after the experience, she shared with us what it was like for her, and on the outside, it looked like it was just pure agony. I mean, it was the most difficult part of her life. And she was like, people don't even know what bliss is. They think they know what bliss is. And so she was in this super blissful experience. And it was such a reminder that, like, in the heart of all pain in life is this deeper bliss, this deeper divine experience of bliss that's available if we allow ourselves to penetrate into the heart of our pain, into the heart of the challenge there. So that was just beautiful as well.
Wow. Yeah.
And intellectually so interesting too, just, knowing what's going on a neurobiological level and watching this person sort of cycle through all of her different personality structures, like all the defense structures that she took on as a result of these traumas. It was like watching the final scene in Terminator 2, where like the liquid metal robot, remember Terminator 2? Goes into the liquid metal robot, goes into lava, and then all the versions of that start coming out. It was like watching that, all of her personality structures. A little girl, an angry, kind of fierce woman, like it was just the whole spectrum of, oh, I need you to hold me, to get off of me. Like all of those pieces just kept cycling through. And I was struck by, I recognized in that moment, I thought, wow, if a person went into this state of consciousness in the current Western frame, they end up in an ER with a psychosis diagnosis and like a benzo that arrests that organic process of moving to completion. So they get frozen in that, and then that becomes their story for the next 30, 40 years. But in a supportive environment, those pieces are allowed to come to the surface. They express themselves. They simultaneously learn that it's okay to be expressed, but also that their expression is not needed for their safety. And so then they can integrate. And to watch that process just, and then for her to come out the other side of it in this more deeply integrated way was just so beautiful and just intellectually fascinating, and such a confirmation of my own direct experience with my own journey and with my clients, and kind of with my current map of what is going on in, in the kind of the Western psychiatric medical paradigm that's, it's changing, but that kind of what's going on in that space. So it was just beautiful. What a gift to be able to be in that space.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. As having experience in spaces like that, I'm right there with you as you're talking about it. It's like I'm feeling it. Wow. And that what you said about going through that and the Western model of they'll freeze them in that space and that becomes their story. I remember being very interested in schizophrenia, mental health, I read an article called "What a Shaman Sees in a Mental Hospital" that I thought was really well written a bunch of years back, and also listening to some Joseph Campbell talks about that. I think it was Campbell that mentioned that when someone is going through a break from an ordinary, normal sort of reality, general consensus reality, that the tribe of people that are there with them, essentially they sit for that person to go through that experience, go through that ordeal, however long it takes, because they know that when they come out on the other side, that they're going to be of a great value to that unit, that community. And I
mean that, well, for a tribe or for a community that has that wisdom, exactly. And I think that the shamanic phenotype, so to speak, like of the human, is a person who is like kind of high intelligence, high creativity, high sensitivity. And it seems to me that there's a taking on of, like, as the community, the tribe or the community moves forward, evolves, develops new technology, different challenges happen, certain values begin to become underrepresented in a particular tribe for whatever reason. And I think a classic example of this is pre-agriculture, humans didn't I don't think that, we didn't build gymnasiums to go work out. We were just moving shit around. We were just active. And so with agriculture, and then more specifically with the Industrial Revolution, even, it's like now we pay money to go lift weights, to go move things around to the gym. It's because the technologies have evolved to a level where now we actually have to consciously go do these things. And I think that happens, with any sort of technology that we take on. And I think that the shaman type, to some extent, they feel the pain of the underrepresented values in this amplified way. And for a culture that gets that, they're going to say, yes, there's some values that aren't being represented in the tribe. We need to support that. We need to allow a person to go into that, to bring something back, deeper insight, deeper understanding, some deeper wisdom or knowledge that is needed for us to be able to thrive. And if that is a supported process, yes, then you get access to this continuous wisdom that can be a part of the culture. But I think in Western culture, it's sort of a monoconscious culture. We have this like productivity focused consciousness, which is like alcohol and caffeine and television and like cocaine, like methamphetamine sort of like mindset.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the Gnostic experience, the mystical experience, like that hasn't been very well supported with our social structures. In fact, it's been kind of eradicated to a large degree. And then we take on these, we have these attempts to suppress the pain that we experience by having eliminated those states of consciousness. So we drug ourselves out, we take on psychiatric medication. We tend to try to reinforce ego structures that need to die and fall away to be reborn. And we just kind of try to hold them in place, I think. So, but yeah, well supported. I think it's not just like you get back to a base. It's not like you just get back to where you were it's like you get better. You go beyond better in a way.
Right.
Like there's a growth, there's a wisdom, there's a deeper sense of connection to your tribe, to a sense of clarity, to your purpose, to understanding. And that's certainly what I directly experienced going through so-called psychosis and schizoaffective and bipolar and all of the shit in the DSM. And, was told by Stanford psychiatrists that, you will never be like, you will need to be on these medications your entire life. You're crazy if you think you're going to go off of them. Like, you are not to be associated with professionally, if you think that you can do this without medication. And thank God I knew how to read research papers, because I think a lot of the doctors don't understand how to read research papers and they don't know how to use Google properly. I mean, it's not like it's the information is out there, but it's not integrated into the mainstream paradigm yet. So I think experiences like this, and I think the psychedelic renaissance is by definition or sort of by necessity, it's bringing up these conversations around the more mystic approach, the more transpersonal approach, the trauma-based approach, and the role that all of those things play in the space of mental health.
Yeah, I really resonated with what you said about fear of going crazy. Mm-hmm. So my uncle was diagnosed as bipolar schizoaffectoid, I think. It was the official diagnosis, with some other things in there. Who the hell knows? Because he's just been in this system for so long and so many pills and things. And I grew up with this fear instilled in me by mainly my mom, coming from a good place, but not expressing it in a healthy way. Right. Whenever I did something that was kind of out of bounds or whatever, it was like, oh, I hope he doesn't develop what your brother has, and like, I hope he doesn't go off. And that really didn't help, because then it created this fear in me that I think actually limited me whenever I wanted to go and experiment and do something that was out of bounds, but I always felt the desire and the push for that. And, so that fear was like, okay, am I crazy? Is this weird? Is this too abnormal? And I think that there's this unbounded, unfiltered creativity and intelligence and deep soulful connection, to something else on the other side that people that have experiences like this can experience, which, like when I first met you, my original initial thought was, this guy is super smart and super creative and just full of energy and like really I was just like with it, like whatever you were talking to me about, like I was just like, I'm with this. This is cool. Like this guy's on another level here. Yeah. But you had struggled with this. So I want to hear a little bit about your story with this, with what you were diagnosed with, what you were prescribed, your journey with this, and how you eventually got out of it. I know you said reading research papers helped, but talk to me a little bit about that fear of going quote unquote crazy, if you will.
It's so strange. I mean, the intersection between like our dharma or our life purpose and narrative, and there's just so many, like stretching back as far as I can remember, there was always a fascination with madness, with magic, with mysticism, with psychology, like all these pieces have been there, part of my being for as long as I can remember. I was making I was like programming computer programs when I was a kid around self-help, journaling, but also making kind of mischievous programs called Psychosis. Like I had a brand called Psychosis. My hacker handle was Psycho when I was like 10, like just, I was making stop motion animation films about mushroom journeys when I was like 10 years old, not having taken psychedelics. So there's something in the DNA or in the imprint of life that I can't, it's always been a part of me, and,
Right. Yeah.
and in a weird way, I do recall seeing, I remember seeing like imagery of Louis Wayne's cats. I don't know if there's these famous artist, Louis Wayne, he's drawn these cats, and they say that like as his schizophrenia progressed, his cats got like more and more abstract and kind of psychedelic. That may or may not actually be true if you look into the history of him. But when I saw those cats, I thought that's so interesting. Like schizophrenia seems like a cool thing. Like why not be schizophrenic? Like I was drawn towards whatever that was. I was 16 years old in some way, and I also remember as a kid, like when I was taking psychedelics, there was this like urban myth, like if you take, I don't know, some amount of like LSD, you're legally insane. You remember this like
Right.
myth?
I remember
like,
that. Yeah.
It's like fiction. Like if you've taken 12 hits of LSD or 10 hits or 100, like there was some thing in high school, right? Where it was like,
I remember this. Yes.
And so I don't know, like, you've committed treason. I mean, there were so many strange, like, but I think I tried to break that barrier. I was like, okay, I want to see what that's like. It was very cavalier. But when I was 18, I had what you could say would be a psychotic break. I mean, that's the best, there was a break from reality, and it was not, as far as I can tell, potentiated by, taking psychedelic. Maybe that laid the groundwork for these things to emerge, but it wasn't like I took LSD and then had a psychotic break. It was like I was in like a sober mindset basically, and then entered into this altered visionary state of consciousness that was beautiful and then also terrifying. And I basically was like on a highway, and I thought that I could like teleport to visit my girlfriend by like driving into the back of a semi, like on the highway. Like it was like a scene from this old like Spy Hunter video game where you would like drive into the back of a semi and like teleport. Like literally that was the scene that I was in.
Wow.
And so I tried it out. I tried it. I was like, oh, and like the moment of trying it was this like transcendent, blissful. It was like the gates of heaven had like opened up or something. Like it was like a holy moment in a way. And then I hit the back of a fucking semi on the highway, and it was very snap back into reality and fear and shame and like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this is crazy. Like, this is nuts, and the police came, and I just like told them the truth. I was like, I thought I could, and they were just like, you need to go home. Like, I didn't get arrested. They let me get back on the highway and drive back home. And then I think they called my parents or something.
Listen now, don't try and teleport. No, one more time.
Yeah, it was so crazy. It was like, and so that, and at the time I was studying like Qigong, and I had this like Qigong teacher that was very like, I mean, he's basically telling you like reality is literally a construct of your imagination. Like you're in this imagination space. And I remember like my dad, one of my first memories of my father, he was a high school science teacher, like telling me, I remember him like putting his hand on a table in our kitchen and saying like, there's a possibility that like this table will dissolve and my hand will go through the table like any moment. That's always a possibility, So like from an early age, I was primed to the plasticity of reality, and so some perfect storm of things happened where that I tested this fundamental assumption of reality, and it was terrifying in a way. And then that led to me going and talking to a psychiatrist, and my mom. I remember going, and I was very I was very disassociated at that point. I think I think I was just very inside myself. I didn't really understand what was happening outside of me. I was prescribed something. I don't even remember what the prescription was for, but he was like, I think you might be schizoaffective. Like, here's some antipsychotic or something to take. And I just didn't, that was it. I didn't take it, and I stopped talking about what I was experiencing. And I just kind of tried to ignore what I was going through. And I think that I was smart enough and intelligent and charismatic enough that like I could kind of get through things just on that, without needing to discuss what my feelings were or what was happening inside of me in a meaningful way. And that kind of set up, there was like a decade, that my 20s were riddled with those types of experiences. I didn't drive into a semi again, but there were other spaces of thinking that I was like talking to aliens or time travelers or seeing Jesus Christ, like in my girlfriend, or seeing the devil. Like, it was and I felt like I was in a parable is the best way to describe the experience. It was like everything was deeply metaphoric. Mm-hmm. And I would hear voices, not like that weren't there, but I would like hear conversations that were happening around me. And then somehow I would like select a dozen words from various conversations and like assemble a sentence. It was like I would use to create these meaningful sentences. It was almost like a meta conversation that was happening.
Like a message for you.
Some kind of a message or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I also was then kind of in and out of, and it was very stressful. It was a very unstable point. I was also doing other stuff creatively. Like, I was running a nonprofit as a lobbyist for a bit. I started a company based on this patent that I had. I was working with other friends, helping start businesses, and but nothing really stuck. Like that, like everything would just, any kind of success I would have would just disintegrate. I would it was just, there was no internal footing to really grow from. It was just very boom and bust, depression, these manias. And I don't know. I guess I just never thought like, I stopped, like became sober, like didn't ever touch psychedelics again. Didn't, it was like not even having caffeine, like got really into trying to like understand what I was putting into my body, but nothing really worked. Like I found myself back in those states of consciousness regularly, and I didn't have any understanding of how to be with them. And it wasn't until I actually was dating this woman who was in med school. And then she was in residency at Harvard and then ultimately at Stanford for psychiatry. We had fallen in love, and very tumultuous relationship. Yeah, I mean, it was just very, like, it was a very, so interesting. Like, I would never be in that relationship now, but just at the time, like, we were so in love with each other, and it was this it was like this Romeo and Juliet kind of like family drama. Like, it was very, very wild. But through that, there was something that happened, and I thought, okay, like the tribe of psychiatry is calling this dance you're doing like bipolar or schizophrenic. Clearly, like, they're not wrong. Like, you're doing something. Like, this is not a normal, this is not a normal experience. So let's like look at that. And I think because I had this relationship with a psychiatrist, I was like, oh, they're not evil people. Like, she's like really well-intentioned. She's very spiritual in a lot of ways. So I started to see a psychiatrist around that time, early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, like 30 or something. Yeah. And it was interesting. Yes. Like the dance I was doing fit this description of what the tribe of psychiatry calls bipolar, schizophrenia, schizoaffective. And yet what they wanted me to do with it, the prognosis, I suppose, or like here's the like, I tried some lithium that they prescribed to me, and I was so skeptical of it, and it felt to me like it felt like I was like living inside of like a Nirvana album or something. It was just so dark. Like I was in this dark space, and I don't know. I had a sense that there was something. There was like something to be felt that I was not able to feel, that there was some aspect of myself that I needed to get access to that wasn't available on the lithium. And so I went off to lithium, and kind of without just, I mean, my family was upset. People were upset with me for doing this. But I had this deeper intuition. That was, there's an alternate way through this. It's not guaranteed. Like maybe you'll die, because people are telling me you're going to commit suicide or some shit. Like, it felt like climbing like Mount Everest, like you go to climb Everest and there's like bodies of people that have tried to climb it that are just like on the ice next to you. It's like possible, but like maybe not like guaranteed. So I recognized that was a risk. I felt like my intuition told me it was worth trying, and that if I was able to do it, it would also be in service to other people in some sense of kind of mapping out that process. And so, yeah, I guess that when I went off that lithium, I had a vision, the best way to describe it. I've spoken of this at length before, but it was a vision of a woman that came to me at my bedside. She had her palms out, like she was holding this like liquid, and she was shimmering and green. And she was like, this pain is your medicine. Like you need to take this, like this is for you. So I was like, okay. And I just consciously chose to feel and go into the pain that I was experiencing in that moment, that was potentiated by a breakup with a psychiatrist girlfriend. Or she had said, my colleagues at Stanford have told me, Stanford psychiatrists don't date men with bipolar. I have to break up with you. Like you'll never get better. It's like you're an alcoholic. And
damn.
Fuck. And also, like, if she was like, man, if my colleagues know that I'm with someone who thinks you can do this without medication, like I'll be ruined professionally. I mean, so much fear and just shame and pain was coming up in there. And heartbreaking, because I saw this person, like as a human, I saw this person that I loved that was just afraid and like was literally just existing in this other paradigm that was just like so faulty. But God, it was heartbreaking to watch. And I'm grateful for it, because I feel like I got this front row seat of the limitations of, the institution of Western psychiatry. Like, you're at the top programs, one of the most brilliant people in there, and just watching what the pain was that was going on there, and just the limitations of that. So I can see how that served me dharmically now. But at the time, man, so painful. But I went into that pain, and it was like a 3-hour ordeal of going into myself. It was a visual experience. It was like these writhing black eels. It was terrifying. And on the other side of it, I felt so much. I just felt like calm and relaxed, and like, I could like take a breath. And I remember hearing a voice that was just like, kindness can go a long way. And that really informed me in terms of my interactions with my ex. And just, it was the first time that I had consciously chosen to go into myself to feel an emotion intentionally.
Wow.
And later on, I would speak to a woman who's a medicine woman, and when I described that experience, she was like, oh yes. Like, well, sometimes ayahuasca spirit visits you, whether you've taken the medicine or not. And she just said that was she saw that as an ayahuasca experience. This shimmering green woman coming to me with this liquid medicine to drink, just saying, take this. And I've never actually taken ayahuasca, so I don't have a relationship with that medicine outside of that one experience, but I'm open. Like, I'm just open to it. I don't have any, it was meaningful in and of itself, but to hear it reflected on by a medicine woman describing it as that, I thought was interesting. And then that was kind of that was sort of a turning point in terms of this reorientation to my feelings, like choosing to feel the difficult feelings that was going on inside of me. I think that point of my life, that would be the general theme, that would come up with this journey. And so then and then it wasn't like it was over. I mean, that was like the first step of many steps. And then I think at a certain point, I was like in another breakup situation, and I was like, oh God, you're back in this place, and a mentor suggested that I try MDMA therapy. So I tried MDMA therapy. And then that was kind of the first time that I was able to really like relate to myself, in a deeper way.
What you said, somatic therapy was. I think you just cut out for a second. All right, so you were talking about how somatic therapy was helpful for you.
Yeah, so it was like I feel like that in the way that I've made sense of a lot of this in my mind is that the MDMA therapeutic experience, and it was in an underground space. It allowed me to relate to myself in this different way. And when I found this particular somatic therapist, it was very serendipitous. I watched a YouTube video, and in the YouTube video, I felt like, man, this therapist is relating to their clients the way I was relating to myself, kind of at the height of this MDMA experience. And that felt really important to say, well, if this is kind of my higher self's way of relating to me, go find a person that can teach you how to do that, to like integrate that experience. So I found a NARM therapist, which is like a type of somatic therapy. And it was just that experience really allowed me to begin to further this practice of working with my emotional states, of going into myself and doing it in a relational context that helped integrate that. I think that the somatic therapy really helped me to get ready for, for doing men's work in a way, like just being able to trust another person, and then get, going on a men's retreat and then becoming a co-leader of a men's group for the last couple of years. And then in a way that process allowed me to trust like a business coach. It was like all those pieces, like kind of like,
which you are as well.
Well, now, and I do a lot of coaching work. Yeah. And so I have a whole coaching practice.
Transformational coach and creative advisor.
Is that what I call myself these days? Yeah, it sounds about
that's
right.
What I saw from your website. Yeah.
I was like, is that what the website says? Well, it's always hard to know because, transformational coach feels like the best thing. I mean, on some level, I'm like a human being that's had this particular unique experience that meets some other people in their experience in a way that is helpful and healing. And I feel like I'm kind of comparing notes on the path, and I'm pushing people and challenging them in certain ways. But it really is a very human thing. I think that understanding of the psyche and understanding that it's like we want to move towards wholeness and completion. Like that's the direction that we're trying to go as individuals. And that there's an inner orientation towards that we sometimes just need some help creating a better context for.
Right. Like you were saying, like you were mentioning that you were looking at some YouTube videos and stuff. And I had a guest on the show recently. We were talking about growing mushrooms, cultivating mushrooms, and how, they put together this program, Fungi Academy, one of my newest sponsors. Love those guys. And they were like, what he was saying was the same thing that I went through too. Is like, where are we looking? Where are we finding out? There's like these forums, these people saying these like weird experiences that they're having. Use this technique. No, use this technique. So what would you say, I guess, either like if you could go back and give yourself what you needed then at the most, or if there's someone going through a similar kind of experience now, what would be like the ultimate facilitation or guide or way through what to look for, what to not do, things like that?
Right. Well, it's a strange thing because you get to a certain point and you're like, well, it was it unfolded exactly as it needed to unfold for me. And like, but outside of that perspective, I think an orientation, think of this in like an integral framework, kind of like the 4 different quadrants, belief structures and then behaviors and then relational structures and like systems. So I think that really kind of depends on where you put me, because you could say, well, what did you need in your childhood, or what did you need in your young adulthood, et cetera. But I think that like the bigger pieces that have been very useful, understanding mental health as a context, like that mental health is a context. It's not something that exists inside of like your brain. It's like, it's a bigger thing. It's your relationship structures, the society you find yourself in, your diet, your beliefs, your past, like all of that is being brought to bear on the individual experience. And the leverage point is often not what the West is going to tell you. It's not going to be this psychiatric medication. And it might not be a psychedelic medication or a psychedelic medicine either. I think that that's also important to recognize that, like,
right.
That
Yeah.
that could be a piece of it, but it's a context you find yourself in. Okay. I think that, number one. I think the second thing is the reorientation towards emotional states and feelings as inherently valuable. Like your experience is inherently valuable. And so my experience was valuable in like the moment, sort of in like this micro way, moment to moment, staying present to what I was experiencing, that was uniquely valuable for my growth. But also that my experience itself, like the larger experience that I was going through, was valuable not just to me, but also to the tribe. That like that experience of being sensitive and creative and going through a psychosis was something that was actually in service to my growth and the community's growth, and to treat it as such, not to treat it as something that we need to be afraid of or medicate away or push away. So I think that kind of idea of the valuing of experience. I think an understanding that it's important to be like, it's important to be with people that are going to be able to hold you in your experience, and to learn to discern when someone is going into their own trauma or their own story, or they're shutting down and they can't help you hold space for your experience. That those people do exist, and it's like, it's worth it to try to separate yourself, or at least often temporarily, from people who can't really be with you or hold your experience, or when you try to share how you're feeling with them, it just triggers them in some way. They go into a shame spiral. That you want to share those experiences vulnerably with people, but that you need to kind of be in. You need to learn to discern where those parts of you are going to be safe, and that you can then build the safety for those parts in those whether it's a therapist or a good coach or a community of people, and that those do exist, but they're not everywhere. And also not to waste energy like being attacking or upset or trying to coach some person on how to be with like you in a way. Like it's this very limiting return. It's like a very limited returns in those spaces. Like I think you can tell people how you want to be treated, et cetera, but the person who's going to help you is not someone you're going to have to coach on how to be your coach, basically.
Right.
Right.
I
mean, you can give feedback, but like, there's a person can only be with you to the depth they've been with themselves. And if you're going to touch on some deep things, you need to gravitate towards a person who is also oriented towards holding themselves in their own experience and has that support capacity. I think an understanding of the neurobiology of a psychosis or these mental health pieces, like a map for me that was, they're all sort of manifestations of not being able to regulate your nervous system. And that has a lot to do with your past and like your childhood and previous traumas. And again, getting into supportive environments to allow me to go into those experiences and then integrate them and then learn and build that capacity for self-regulation was really important. learning how to be with the transpersonal space. I think that like understanding holotropic breath work, I'm almost very curious about what would happen if I would have just done holotropic breath work, before all of this stuff, if that would have been a part of my life and practice. Because it's just been so powerful now, and it continues to be such a powerful experience that I've had more powerful experiences with breath work than any other medicine, including bufo or psilocybin or MDMA or.
Wow.
So that I think is important, like working with those transpersonal states. What else comes up in that space? Again, the relational piece, and then also like doing what you need to do to take care of yourself. Like, it's all of the systems. So I feel like you can kind of get leverage in yourself in any particular ways, but like, doing work with my business, like trusting my heart, learning how to be in a place where I feel like I'm doing like my soul's work or I'm following my purpose in some deeper way. And also value and taking responsibility to value myself, to build out structures that support me financially so that I can take care of myself and that I'm not causing myself undue stress by not being able to pay my rent or whatever. Like, I think all those, there's this context that I'm in. So, and I think just a recognition that like, it is possible. Like, you can navigate through this, and there's also going to be people that are going to leave your life, in some way, like, and that's okay. And that there's other people that are going to come into your life, and learning how to, again, discern spaces that your soul feels safe, whether that's a romantic relationship, a business partnership, the right context for certain relationships. Like, maybe I don't feel safe with this person just one-on-one, but I actually do feel safe if I'm in like a coaching or therapeutic environment with them, having a person there with us to navigate through stuff, for example. And also learning how to orient towards, like coaches, mentors, et cetera, where your soul feels like it'll be safe and nourished in those environments. And learning how to create boundaries for yourself, that you can take responsibility for the safety of yourself in those places. There's a lot. I feel like there's been so many pieces to all of this, but like trusting in my intuition, trusting that idea of that there was another possibility for myself, and then going towards it and investing in it and working in that direction. And if someone tells you something's impossible, like, that's more a reflection of them than reality. I think that's helpful.
Yeah. Would you say that a major turning point for you was when you shifted more inwards and listened to the pain and the discomfort and went into that?
100%. That was the defining moment of the journey. I think that the realization that part of myself was valuable. And and now it's a gift, it really is a tremendous gift.
That's you. It's not this thing that you're trying to get away, or that there's something wrong with you, but that it actually has information for you. It's communicating a message to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's you. It's the part of you that your family system and culture or whatever told you wasn't safe to survive. And so you stuffed it away, and that gets painful. Alice Miller said, that our depression is the pain of having abandoned one's authentic self, and that mania, psychosis is sort of the fear that happens when that abandoned self kind of shows up as a stranger, just kind of like shows up to the party like, hey, I'm here. And like, you don't have a relationship with it. So it's terrifying.
Just bursts in the door like, who's ready to go?
So it's, and from my view, it's not about suppressing the pain, or further reinforcing, pushing back the authentic self. It's about integrating those parts of us. And I think that happens neurobiologically as well. I mean, I think that all of these, there's like a biological process that's happening. There's sort of a emotional process that's happening, a spiritual process that's happening, a mythological process. All these pieces kind of, they're happening. You're happening at all these different levels. You can look at any level and you can describe it.
Right. Epigenetic process.
Sure.
Like ancestral trauma and family stuff. Yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah. And it's not even a new thing, I think that's the other piece too, is like, it's not new. This is like, humans have been doing this forever. Like, this process of death and rebirth and going into visionary states. Like, this has been part of our process as a species, as long as we've been a species. So getting more in alignment with that natural process. But like, it is a luxury too, on some level. I mean, I think how challenging it was for me to do all of it, and also how blessed I was in terms of intelligence, independent thinking. I mean, there were times when I was like out of money and like sleeping, basically homeless in like vacant houses, but like I still had family. I still had people I could call. I could have gone back to Pennsylvania again, or gone back to my parents' house or whatever. So I do feel like there was an overwhelming amount of just luck and resources that I was given, to be able to navigate through those spaces. So I hope, part of that is I hope to share my experience in a way that is responsible, but also like it can be a resource for people if they choose to go down that path. Because I meet people all the time that are very stuck. They've been on these, I've been on these medications, and if you talk to them, they say, "Man, I would love nothing more than to be off of them. I feel like I've been on them my entire life. My life. It's a part of myself that's missing through all of this." And it feels vulnerable to share the story in a way, not because there's an embarrassment around it, or that I don't trust in my own self. I used to be nervous, like I was going to go crazy, of course, and then the story's invalidated or something. But I've moved beyond that. But I do think that there's always like the answer is not just like go off your medication and take a bunch of mushrooms and like you're fine. Like that's certainly not
right.
Like, that's probably not the path. But
right.
And maybe for somebody it is, but I certainly wouldn't. It's like I'm not even advocating. I don't even know if I'm advocating much of anything other than just saying like, this is what my path has been. Here's what I feel like the research shows. I think that there's a tremendous gap between what is possible for humans and like what the current paradigm offers. I think that we skew far, far too strongly towards, here's a psychiatric medication that really doesn't even work that well for many people. It's like the efficacy of them is not even that great, with a lot of really negative side effects. I'm grateful for the spot that I'm at, and for all the experience. Like, I feel like I got this tour of the psychedelic space, of the transpersonal space, of what is happening in psychiatry, and like how that all works, and like that whole industry. And it's interesting. I've been able to like make innovations within that space, and I've been able to consult for psychiatrists or for therapists and help develop new protocols and talk to them about and make, discover new things that could become new treatments for people in certain ways and help advance that type of thing. So it's been a rewarding journey. And at this point, it just has become part of the journey, and I think I'm in a great place in my life, where I have yes. Is there still part of me that occasionally like that fear of going to hell or that fear of going crazy comes up? It's like there a little bit. It's like 1 or 2% sometimes. But I do think there's a deeper sense in trust and orientation that like, if you're going to hell, go. If you're going to crazy, go crazy. Like, let yourself go crazy. Like, go surrender to that experience and don't fight it. Don't fight whatever it is that you're, and I've had enough repetition, so to speak, with those experiences that I feel confident. There's like I guess it's a degree of self-esteem in that I feel like I can handle those experiences should they come up,
Right. So when the sort of wild manic guy comes into the party, you've established a relationship with him now. It's not an alienated stranger. It's like, oh, okay, you're here, but like, listen, man, we're not really going too crazy tonight. Just a little bit of this or a little bit of that. You could stay a little while. As my friend would say, invited into tea, talk, have a conversation. But when it's time to exit, it's time to exit. When the party's over, it's over. But it's not this fear. You're not trying to like
Well, I don't
shove
have,
it away.
I mean, I don't have, I think as that relationship has been built, like that just is me, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like my authentic self is something that I know that the more that I take an active role of expressing it, being in it, the less that it acts out in some way in my life. It just, because it's here. It's like,
Yeah, because you have those spaces, you have those containers where
so,
you mentioned. I mean, if there's anything else you want to say about this,
yeah,
please do. But I was interested in, you brought up men's work, and that's something
yeah,
that I've recently got into. And you mentioned through men's work, through coaching, I'm able to sort of feel safe and allowing things to come up. So yeah, talk to me a little bit about that, and how you got into that, and what that was like for you, feeling out those spaces and
yeah.
having your full self be allowed to be there.
I mean, the first man, I went to a Junto retreat. I don't know if you know Junto
Yes.
and Andrew
Yes.
Horn's work.
Mm-hmm.
Good, beautiful dude and good friend of mine. He for like a year he tried to get me to come to his Junto retreats, and I finally got around to doing it. Maybe it was a couple years, and at the end of it, it was like a 3-day event, maybe 20 or 30 guys. I think it's a pretty large group of guys, maybe 20 people. I had this experience of being in this room with all these guys, and I realized how much fear I had around being in groups of men where I wasn't the leader, like where I wasn't the team captain or something, and these memories came up of being in high school or middle school, even just growing up as a kid, where if I was in a situation with a bunch of guys, like I was often fighting for my say, like fighting, physically fighting, like getting out, like fighting through a mob of 30 guys jumping you or so. It was like this crazy energy of just like the fear of being around like groups of men that I still was carrying into my 30s, late 30s. And that after that first men's retreat, I like realized like, oh, like there was a part of me that thought maybe these guys are all going to beat me up, that was still like going on inside of me in some way. And that realization, and then stepping into them, like, and then starting to like co-lead a men's group, et cetera. Like, I think that, yeah, it shifted it just really shifted something at some deeper level. And I think it's like, it began to help me recognize just even more so the power of just like presence, like just being yourself, showing up in a space and being yourself, and also trusting other people in their experience. So if someone's going through some crazy thing, in the same way, if they're going through some crazy thing in a psychedelic space and you're holding space for them, the best thing you can do is to be present, help them navigate it, help them feel their experience, and to hold a perspective that that the difficult thing they're experiencing is helping them in some way, and not to rob them of that. I think that's also true in the men's workspace. It's like people's life is a psychedelic trip they're going through. And so to be there with them and to help them get present to their experience, like that's the most beneficial thing you can do for someone, in that regard, to help hold space to help hold space and witness their transformation and their potential in that world.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Space is so important in the context of holding an energetic space by just the mere proximity of others, right? But then also this idea of space as an allotment of time, right? Like talking about what you were talking about before, what you were going through, the sort of way in which our society functions doesn't necessarily foster the conditions to allow for time and space to exist, to go through a process.
Right.
You have to make money, you have to pay bills, you have to get moving, right? So our culture has been, that's why I think that we have this kind of psychiatric model that we have, this pharmaceutical industry complex that we have, is because it's all about getting back to the wheel of feeding the incentive structure that doesn't necessarily serve you. So this concept of space and the allowance of the process seems to be a big theme in a lot of the stuff that you're doing.
A mentor said to me years ago, like, if you need to take a couple, and this wasn't like, I was watching a video a mentor had given me that he had recorded or something. So it was like, he was kind of making this general case to people, like, get your inner world together, like, get that shit together. And it might take you a year or two to do that. But do it, like, go before anything else, before you try to build your business, just go do what you need to do to get your inner world together. Because we need your contribution, we need your work, we need your expression. But until that's handled, it's going to be very difficult to get, if not impossible, to do anything else. And so I remember hearing that. It was very difficult to hear, like, shit, like, really take 2 years of my life to go do some other thing. I have so much that I need to do. I wish I would have taken that even more seriously now, looking back. Just that the prioritization of the inner world and of healing the relationship to one's self, to their deepest self, it's not selfish to make that the topmost priority. Like, it's just no way that is selfish. It's the most selfless thing you can do. The biggest gift you can give your community is to take responsibility for your healing and just go on that journey, go on that path, and seek out the spaces and places that are going to be able to hold you in that process. And get that sorted out, like, that's, and trust that it's sorted out. And if you're around someone who says that you're not going to get it, that you can't sort it out, or that you've got some, Prozac deficiency or something, like, maybe just check that against your intuition, check that against the science, check that against what's really going on. And see if you've got an opportunity to do some deeper work and to grow in some way, but you can get that sorted out. I believe that's the top priority, is to get that sorted out. So that was very helpful. And it's also, it's right. It's like, I'm getting left behind, and I'm not, and, in some senses, I do feel that, like, it's tough sometimes, especially my line of work is that I'm the coach and advisor to people who are very often my age or younger, who are billion-dollar companies, that have, and it's been a challenge at times for me to be around people that have accomplished a lot more externally, so to speak, or, like, financial, that's been a part of myself that I've had to learn to be with, is, like, in a way, recognizing that I had to go on this internal journey before I could ever build anything that was going to be meaningful. And also that journey I went on has now put me in a position to be able to help other people, regardless of how much big their company is, how much money they've made, et cetera, that there are some very real challenges people are still facing. And I've had the benefit to confront a lot of those things already. And so, that was work that I kind of did first, in a way. But yeah, I think that has been that decision to take time to heal and really go inward with myself. On some level, I think they're, dealing with fears of you're too far behind, you're behind, or, these types of things. But at the end of it, though, I do feel a deep sense of gratitude that I had any space at all to be able to do that. To be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that just don't, and they just get thrown into the system, and they're on the streets, and they're in the hospitals, and they're on the meds,
Right.
and it's just a cycle, and they can't get out of it. But if they had the opportunity or the know-how, so anybody that's listening that, like, maybe feels like in that position, is like, go and find the people that can be with you in that space. Find, go online, do the research, find it out. Just don't necessarily just go with the first suggestion that you get, and And yeah, just listening to you talk about that experience of you being, a coach to these people that have billion-dollar companies and things, I was just thinking of the thought, it's almost like maybe you had desired to be like the hardware, like you wanted to be like the iPhone or the MacBook, but your purpose is to be just this excellent operating system that can be installed and plugged in to so many different devices. And you're helping facilitate this amazing change and growth. Talk to me a little bit about what that's like, and when you started that. When we met in 2012, I don't think that you were doing that. I believe you were working on the credit card covers.
So I've always, my entire adult life, I've always had some kind of coaching mentorship relationship with people. In college, I was an athlete and a captain and a coach, and trained up athletes in ultimate frisbee. Some of them went on to become professional or world champion players, etc. Like coaching entrepreneurs, people that would come to me and say, "Hey, I'd like to learn business or whatever," and I would teach people, kind of mentor them in that. Some folks that have gone on to build billion-dollar brands in that way, but I never. And other things, like people would just start coming to me. It was never like I hung up a shingle and said, "Anthony, coaching." People would say, "Hey, can you teach me this, or can I pay you to coach me around something?" I remember, I think my first paying client was someone who came to me, said, "Are you a coach?" And I said, "Well, I kind of could. I have coached people around things before." And person wanted to lose weight or something, and I was like, "Well, I'm not a health. I was not even like a thing I was into. I wasn't like a health coach or nutritionist or workout person, but they felt like I'd be able to support them." And so then I just applied some basic things, checked in with them, whatever. They lost like 70 pounds in some short period. Like they lost all this weight. It was like this, and I started to realize that it was more about the space. It was like the transformational space. It's like if you have a kid and your kid's like, "I want to become whatever, an astronaut," you don't have to be an astronaut to like support them in that process of loving them and helping them navigate through it. Like that's, and I think coaching is a lot like that. I think leadership is a lot like parenting in that regard. But I always had these people that would come to me, but it wasn't until, really quite recently that I actually even said, like, I'm going to focus on this as like a business. It's a more recent thing. I had people that would get referred to me and they would say, so-and-so told me I should convince you to like accept money to coach me. That was literally where the clients would start to come from. So it was, and at a certain point I was like, okay, there's something here. This is like, the market is like literally knocking on your door. Like, we want you to help us in this way. So I tried to take that more seriously, and I felt like there's a gift there that I should really cultivate and develop more. And so, more recently, I started to create more structure. I started to really think about who are the people that I'm best suited to serve. What are the containers that I really need to be able to work with them in? And so, like, I realized that working with someone for a year, for example, is much better for me than like a month-to-month kind of relationship, because shit comes up for people. They try to run from things. Like, I want the long-term commitment to growth. And so I just got very clear on like what the best way to work with me would be. And for people, that's to my one-on-one work is it's a year container. I take a handful of people that I work with. And it's typically very intelligent, sensitive, creative people that have accomplished a lot of things in the world, deeply probably grounded in spiritual practice. They have experience with psychedelics. They've had a more mystic experience of life in some capacity. But they haven't had to like similar to me in many ways, but they haven't necessarily had to like take on this additional work of like really healing the deeper, dealing with the psychosis and that type of stuff. I think that there was a way that their context didn't require that they face that, but the work that I did in that space is so applicable. It's almost like that's the super amplified version of everything that's going on for all of us humans. And so to navigate that, it's like training at altitude or something. And when you come back down to meet somebody where they are, hopefully they don't have to go through a decade of psychosis to get benefit from these experiences, to integrate them and to be able to move forward in meaningful ways. That work it's become it's very rewarding work to do. And I'm so grateful for it, and it's also provided a really good foundation for me to be able to continue my own inner journey, my own creative work. I maintain a bunch of other creative projects as well, but the primary focus now is the coaching. We call it Earth Pilot. The idea that we're all co-pilots of Spaceship Earth, that we're developing this deep leadership capacity, which is the capacity to lead and to be led inside of ourselves, so that we can excavate our gifts and then bring those into the world, and then to be able to hold really radical space for organizations and for the people that we're with, to create a dynamic culture so people can grow and heal within your presence. Whether that's your romantic partnership or your business or your community.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that a lot of people, I guess there's this tendency sometimes for some people to think about businesses as being, you hear a lot of talk about, Amazon and this, and there are all these businesses, they're doing these bad things, whatever. But I suppose by people who are coming to you, like I see that you work with the co-founder of Asana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm using Asana right now. It's great. I've always loved Asana. But there's something about it, right? It's like it's a way that's it feels more human. It feels more intuitive. And so I think that by working with these people and for having them to go into their experiences and into their wounds and like really bring out kind of the fullest of their potential, that it's changing things from the inside. Right. That I feel like that's what really a part of how we actually make the world a better place. Not that like to paint it in this black and white image of like, well, if you're like creating a business and making money, then that's like bad or something. It's like,
well, I mean, it's interesting. Like Asana, the folks that I work with, they often are running like the best places on earth to work. I mean, I think that like the culture of Asana is one that the people that like are a part of that team, like they're very, they're already doing things that are, beyond what most other organizations in the world are doing. We did a like a psychedelic breathwork experience over COVID for my buddy Dave Heath's company Bombas, like the one-for-one sock company, and
yeah.
Those guys are now, a $1 billion brand. They were probably running a crowd fund when you and I met. They were like was the crowdfunding socks. But their group is like the number one place to work in their segment. For retail, it's like the number one culture to work or whatever. So there's a certain kind of founder who already is oriented towards wanting to build world-class culture, that really wants to push themselves, that is already probably at the top of their game, but yet is like, where are they going to go to get support and structure and to go to the next level for what's capable for them. That's where I found that I really excel. It's people that have already made their way in some capacity to the top of their field or the top of their industry. And then, and I think for me, I shared that. I said, look, we exist in this place called capitalism. And interestingly enough, I mean, Justin has left Asana to found one project, which is really to kind of re-engineer and redesign economic and governance systems. I mean, he really wants to kind of re-engineer the capitalist system in some way. So that's kind of, he says that, after one of our sessions, he got clear that was a higher calling for him, and, I was able to support him in stepping into that process we went with him for over 3 years. But there is something within the model of capitalism, which is like, because of the competitive nature, right? Like the culture, the corporate culture, so to speak, like it's in this competitive space where it's being pitted against like other companies. Like, so building a healthy, vibrant culture that unlocks people's gifts, that's sustainable, to me feels like that is like a competitive advantage. So like within this system, there's extra pressure within companies to get their culture right, which means there's extra pressure on the leaders and founders of those companies to get their internal culture right, which is their relationship and the language they use with themselves, basically. the way that they're orienting towards themselves. So I see an opportunity and kind of global change to like a leverage point is that working with these leaders, being able to work with and help support the best corporate kind of cultures in the world, like that has a long-term impact in terms of the people that work in those organizations are going to go home and they're going to be able to take things to their families that they wouldn't normally be able to give in terms of emotional capacity, freedom, flexibility, et cetera. And I think then those things birth a generation of kids that are able to be more compassionate, more empathetic, and that lays a foundation for some of these larger cultural changes to happen and to evolve. You know, and so I think you can work. I'm all about changing the system, and you know, from outside, but I'm also about changing it from within. I think that all of that is valid and relevant. You know, I think it's like, I mean, Rick Doblin taught me this in terms of his orientation as like a psychedelic advocate or activist to go to the Vets Administration, to go right to the heart of the American kind of consumer.
Yeah, right to the wound. Yeah,
right, and say that's where we're going to get the leverage in this overall system. So, I think that there are tremendous leverage points there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing to see. You know, as much as you can get bogged down in the negative, there's so much positive emerging, and I think it's because a lot of this healing. And yeah, I mean, I worked with Decriminalize Denver to pass the psilocybin decriminalization initiative in 2019, and a large part of that was an organization called Veterans for Natural Rights, and you know, that was communicating to others who might not be in our inner psychedelic, you know, jargon and understanding and those kinds of things in the language that they understand, in the context that they understand, was immensely transformative. So let's talk a little bit about your work now as an activist with Decriminalize Nature New York. I mean, this is huge. New York is my hometown. I'm out here in Denver now, but you know, it's a place that's near and dear to my heart, and I feel that it's definitely a sort of belly of the beast in a way that has a lot going on and needs a lot of healing as well.
Well, and you know, thank you for your work in Colorado, because that was inspirational for us in New York, and you know, spoke to some of the folks out there and got kind of support and strategy, you know, in our work here in New York. Pulled together a small group of people. I guess it was a year and a half ago now to found the Decriminalize Nature New York chapter and get that up and running. And I feel, and now I'm in an advisory role with them, and I feel like we're in a position this year to get a bill passed. I mean, every person that I've talked to that's currently running for office in New York City is, when I ask them if they're supporting, you know, a decriminalized nature bill when city council gets elected, everyone has said yes. You know, they all are saying yes to it. So I think that the foundations are there. And for me, that decriminalized nature piece in New York was another leverage point. You know, it was kind of this, New York City felt important. I mean, it's like healing and trauma felt like the primary thing that we needed to get leverage on for as a species. And the psychedelic movement felt like that was the leverage point to that conversation, both in terms of getting people healing, but also just opening up the process of integration and trauma, et cetera. And then the New York City movement of decrim felt like that was, you know, kind of another leverage point. It was like within that space, because I'm here, but also because New York City can kind of give ground cover to other city councils around the country or around the world, really, to move this stuff forward culturally. So that was how I kind of thought about it. You know, it was like, how do I get leverage at culture in a large scale way, and then finding the thing that was just the highest leverage point closest to me to be able to move things in that direction. I mean, I think now, I don't know, it looks like we're going to be like, there's a federal bill right now for like
the Democrats, I think, introduced a federal bill. There's always something new happening.
It's so
and in
fast.
California, they passed something. So it's so fast. I feel like it's just been this exponential thing.
Yeah.
Once the cat was out of the bag, you know, some people will say, well, it's still not, blah, blah, blah. But, the Democrats, I think, introduced a bill to end the war on drugs
Right.
is what I read. So
Right.
sometimes it's hard to keep up because there's so many changes happening, but it's so great to see.
It really is, and I'm curious about, this is just something I'm curious about that I'd love to see someone do research on this. But I spent some time with building a relationship with Ray Kurzweil, the famous futurist and inventor, years ago. And, he talks about exponential change of technology, et cetera. And one of the things that I've been curious about is cultural and political change happening at an exponential rate? It's like the time from the introduction of an idea into the mainstream to how fast it gets like rapid adoption, right? Is that compressing? Are things happening faster from the time that people are like, we need to change this, to the time that things actually get done? My intuition is that seems to be yes. Like the things go from like not being on anyone's radar to just like all of a sudden it's everywhere, and like there's just things happening, but you can't even keep up to the legislation and things that are happening.
Right.
I'm curious about that. I'm curious if that's if we're reaching a point where things are just happening faster and faster and faster in terms of policy and folks' willingness to adopt things and change. And so I'd like to see someone do some research on that to see if we're.
I would love to see it too. My intuition tells me yes, and I'm thinking of Terrence McKenna when he says, time is speeding up, things are getting stranger. It's like, but we're like we are, as the internet and psychedelic culture sort of are emerging. Sort of together. It's like we are in this new world where literally we could see and connect with everybody and everything at every moment. And it is very psychedelic because a lot of the times in a deep psychedelic space, you are in this sort of like infinite portal of just novelty and diversity and color and fractals. And that seems to be kind of seeping into this reality in the sense of how things are shaped in people's minds and what the consciousness adapts and what's out there and what's hot now and what's at the moment. A news story that happened 3 days ago, everybody in the world is panicking about, and now it's something else, or just like how quickly we adapt to new technologies or new language or whatever it is. It really is really amazing to see. And you can say it's like also some kind of biomimicry of the mycelial network, like, how it connects as sort of this nature's internet, this web extending. And now we're seeing it kind of in us more, but I always like to bring that up.
There's that. Well, policy, I suppose, policy is technology, right? Like a piece of policy is a human technology, to say we have this particular way that we're going to govern ourselves, So if technologies are speeding up, if the rate of adoption of technology is increasing, then perhaps that we're also adopting new, legislation is happening faster too. It's a good thesis. I'd like to see someone dig into it more deeply.
I hope the legislation speeds up quicker too, because it still is a bit stagnant. I just think that the infrastructure is very archaic, and I think they need to like surrender to what is emerging, and then we'll see dramatic shifts.
Yeah, well, I think our system was built to use horses and parchment paper and quill pens. That was like what it was designed to do. So. We have quantum communication and electrons, photon-based communication and silicon now. So I think that there's some version of a future governance system that is more dynamic and more responsive. I think the liquid democracies and dynamic democracies, I think that there is some real promise in those types of structures. And I'm curious about what these things look like into the future. And I do think that sometimes companies are going to start experimenting with some of this stuff. I think that there's opportunities within companies and corporate structures to experiment with these new things before they go mainstream in society. The final piece on the activist front, I guess I could say, is that I recently was in a PBS documentary that's coming out, where I was invited to sit for a woman, an old friend of mine, actually been friends with her for maybe 20 years now, who had some really intense trauma from multiple rape, sexual assault, like in grad school, and when I was in grad school, she was an undergraduate. And so, yeah, PBS invited me to be in the space with her while she took MDMA to kind of help her be in that place. And quite beautiful, a bit edgy to kind of come out publicly to say, hey, I'm just going to be willing to be in this space with someone on medicine. It also, we haven't seen it yet. It comes out next week, I think, is when the series called the Mysteries of Mental Illness. It's a 4-part series, but I think it's the first time that a national platform is going to show kind of just the whole thing, like just an unanonymized, like no one in like a weird voice, just kind of as an activist thing to say, hey, like this is, yes, like these laws are happening in other places, but there is still a huge gap for people to get access. And this is currently the way that people are accessing it. And she's a civil rights attorney, phenomenal activist and lawyer, but has her own healing journey she's been going through. And so she was open to kind of put that on display, so to speak, to show people what that was like.
Amazing.
So in that regard, I felt like I was nervous about it, because I think that my paranoia, it's like my third paranoia is going to jail. It's like going to hell, going crazy, and then going to jail is always. So I had to really deal with that when she asked me if I could, be in kind of help hold space for her. But I think that, she inspired me in a way. I mean, she was willing to step into that space. And so when she asked me to do it, I thought, okay, this is an opportunity to be more of an activist in this space, to show people what goes on and the power of it. And also that it's not something people should not feel ashamed of. Like, it's not something that like, it's a mistake that these things have been criminalized. Like, it's just, It was an error. Like, so there was a mistake that was made, and people are suffering as a result of that mistake. There's no other way around it. It's just,
system error.
It was a system error. And so, and so I think that was just so anyways, you talked about activist work. That piece is, is forthcoming. So probably by the time people hear this, it'll already have happened.
Yeah.
They can go, it should be streamable on PBS.
Great. Yeah, we'll put the link in there. Thank you so much for doing that. I think it's immensely important, and to your friend as well, for people to, as Rick Doblin would say, come out of the psychedelic closet, and really just say, hey, look, and Dr. Carl Hart recently talking about his relationship with drugs.
Right.
And how, these are personal choices, and these are things that have tremendous benefit and value. And when we have education around them and proper people who have been there to guide and facilitate, I mean, we can have dramatic shifts in the nature of our being and have more peace and harmony with ourselves and each other. So immensely important. So thank you to you and your friend for doing that.
It felt, I appreciate that. It feels important. And I think,
it also gives people permission as well. It allows other people, and to, like you said, she inspired you. So she says, hey, look, we're doing this. Totally. You guys can too. Yeah.
Well, and I think just showing that side of them, the importance of that. And, I don't even really it's been years since I had a major psychedelic experience personally. I think that's the other interesting piece of it, is that I'm an activist and an advocate, want to see these things happen. And I'm also kind of like, there's also tremendous benefit in just taking space and integrating and confronting the psychedelic nature of your life on a day-to-day basis that is important, and breath work and these things, et cetera. So it's, it's a weird thing, because it's like some people I talk to, and it's like, maybe they benefit from more psychedelics, other people maybe less for a while. It's like it's not always just on. It's like but it's learning to work with them in that way.
Such a huge point. I'm so glad that you said that. Like, I was telling you before that I had an old MacBook, and it lasted me a decade.
Yeah.
But I needed to get it. It was time now to get a new one.
Yeah.
So it's like the same kind of thing, right? It's like, you do it when the time comes. You don't have to be doing psychedelics every day, every week, every month.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this kind of thing. There's a time and a place, and when it's handled appropriately as a tool for growth,
Yeah.
it can be tremendously beneficial.
Right. Yeah. There's one thing that came up there. Maybe I lost the thought there. It's really, the remembrance and the recognition that these things are inside of us. Like, what you're experiencing is you. And I think that that to me has been that's the message. And the psychedelics they can be such great teachers, in that they do tend to render themselves obsolete in these particular ways. It's like they're going to show you this part of yourself, and it's like, okay, this is now, but when you get that and you've integrated that, it's not to say you might not have another psychedelic experience. But for me, it's like life has become so inherently psychedelic. Like, it just, even in the difficult conversation you're having with a person or a teammate, like, there's this whole other way for me of like relating to things that I've learned from that space. And I don't know if you get that from other substance, like it's like a good teacher, and it renders itself obsolete. It's like, it's like you've learned this piece, and now you're able to navigate, or at least for a time being, navigate in a different way. And that's, I think, for me, kind of the edge that I'm at now with like I'm like, I might, but every time I take a psychedelic, it always is, I always leave with this question of like, is that the last time I'll ever take I don't know. It's like, maybe that is the last time you'll have a classic psychedelic experience. But there's something there's something that is available in just being present with our experience in every moment, that I've learned from psychedelics, that is, the moment is so deeply powerful and so deeply healing to be present to it. It's beautiful, man. It's an exciting time to be doing this work and to be in this space. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, definitely. And we didn't talk too much about the men's work, but I know that's a big part of your life as well, and it's becoming a big part of mine. And I recently had an experience where I co-hosted and co-led a gathering up in Boulder at this beautiful place, and there were no psychedelics involved, and I left so energized and so buzzing. Because I had kind of been sort of in this space of like, well, everything has to be psychedelics and things like that,
Right.
But I've been slowly coming out of that space and seeing exactly what you're talking about. The sort of kinship, the tribal sort of element, the brotherhood, the community aspect of this particular work, men's work, left me in such a heightened state and in such a clear and present state. So
beautiful.
There's medicine everywhere. There's medicine everywhere to be found. Man, I could talk to you forever. We'll probably have to do this again. I know you probably have to go. But yeah, people can find you at anthonydavidadams.com. And anything else you'd like to share with anyone?
Usually not usually, but sometimes we give away some books to people. So we have a really good integration journal called the Mandala Work, which we'd be happy to give away to some of your listeners if that's cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So maybe, I don't know, in the past, like the way people have done it is like, if they I don't know how you share this stuff, but like, figure out a way, if they share this episode or something, and then tag you or something on Instagram. I'm trying to think of like a simple way to do this. Share this episode somehow and tag me and tag you on social media. I'm at Anthony David Adams. And we'll pick like 3 people or something from that sharing after this comes out. And we'll send them a copy of the Mandala Work, which is this 40-day process for integrating peak experience, psychedelic experience, psychosis, major life trauma, major life accomplishment. It's a really foundational piece of work based on Carl Jung's Red Book that's been really useful for me. A lot of therapists and psychedelic integration folks are using it now. So let's I'd love to give away like 3 copies of that to anybody listening. Is that coherent? Like, do people like follow you? I just want them to share this episode and tag us somehow.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah,
and
we'll pick 3 of those people to
that's great.
Yeah. And if they don't want to do that, they can actually get the book. We give it away for free as a PDF. It's anthonyadams.com/mandala work. They can get a free copy of that book there. I think that's it. I feel complete. This has been a really beautiful conversation. I hope it's been helpful for your audience, and just it was cool to catch up with you in this way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Anthony. And thanks to everybody out there. Check out all the links in the show description, show notes. Till next time. Peace.
All right, brother. Peace.
Hey, if you guys enjoyed that episode, please share it. Tell people about it. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Helps the show. Helps us get visibility. Helps us grow. Check out all the sponsors that make me live and eat and have a roof over my head because they pay me. So they have really cool products, and I love them. SHEATH Underwear, Ohana Kava Bar, Fungi Academy, Mushroom Revival, Student Loan Tutor. All these guys are just big believers in what we're doing, and they make cool stuff. So go get some discounts on some cool stuff. All the links are in the show description. Consider being a patron. Go to patreon.com/Mike Brank. Be a part of our community. Get access to the Micadelic Inner Sanctum Discord and bonus episodes with me and my co-host Matt. Dosadelic. Just a free-flowing comedy jam style type podcast that will be a Patreon exclusive. Also, just be kind to each other, love each other, and just be a good person. Just always remember that, as much as things in this life are about surviving and acquiring and attaining and getting places and going places and doing things, we're already whole and complete, and we're already enough, and we're all doing the best that we can. And if you feel like you can do better, search deep inside, get quiet, listen to that inner voice inside, and go out there in the world and just treat other people with care and love and kindness, and you'll feel good about yourself, and others will feel good too. And thank you so much for listening. Till next time, peace.